can watch her for a little while.
Okay.
You just said stop, bro.
Okay.
Oh, I see. That's in case you wanted.
I'll let you know when it comes up on the screen.
We're live.
And so,
Oh, okay. It's live right now. And I see the kitty cat
oh, good.
in the lower left of the screen.
Her name is Starboard.
Starboard?
Yeah, because she only has one good eye, and it's on her right side.
There are bridges
Wow,
in
S-T-A-R, Starboard.
Yes.
They are
Welcome to
stone
Bridges
and
Programming. We're looking now in Florida, live broadcast.
They are
Kitty.
languages and letters
A
and
wild
poetry and all. They are love and understanding, and they're better than they all. They are languages and letters, they are poetry and all. They are love and understanding, and they're better than they all. There are canyons, they are yawning in the night. They are rank and bitter anger, they are all devoid of light. They are fear and blind suspicion, they are apathy and pride. They are dark and soul foreboding, and they're oh so very wide. They are fear and blind suspicion, they are apathy and pride. They are dark and soul foreboding, and they're oh so very wide. Let us build a bridge of music, let us cross through the song. Let us span another canyon, let us right another wrong. Oh, and if someone should ask us where we're off and bound today, we will tell them building bridges and be off and on our way. Oh, and if someone should ask us where we're off and bound today, we will tell them building bridges and be off and on our way. We will tell them building bridges and be off and on our way.
We will tell them building bridges and be off and on our way. Welcome to Bridges Programming. You're here on Sunday on the Front Stoop, the longest stoop in the world, with Dennis Carius, who's in New York, and Susan Coman, who's in Florida. And I'm sitting next to Susan, and you're looking right now at a feral cat that adopted us. Every year we come back here, and he comes out from under the house, and he sort of hangs out with us, and he sits in that spot until he gets fed, and then sometimes he wanders off like that. But that's nature out there. The statue you see is not really.
We named him Starboard.
Starboard because he's blind in one eye, or she's blind in one eye.
Actually, it is a she, yeah.
She.
But she has her right eye is good and her left eye is blind.
So she walks into things a lot.
Oh, no, she doesn't. She does very, very well with one eye.
But we are here. We think that I think she may be she's sort of a socialist capitalist cat. She believes in socialism, but she's also a capitalist. So she makes sure she gets her food, and she tries to keep other cats away. So that's sort of a form of capitalism.
She creates scarcity, right? She doesn't want other cats to share
her stuff.
Not sure, but she has in the past shared with another cat.
Well, but she's getting greedy in her old age.
Oh my goodness.
She's getting greedy. I mean, that's what Dennis would say. You think a cat is greedy, Dennis?
Oh, that's interesting. I don't think cats are greedy, or 2-year-old kids that haven't eaten in 2 days. I don't call that.
Well,
greedy.
the cat. Oh, look, I feed this cat a lot of food, and she keeps on eating.
She actually has an incredible appetite.
And so do the dogs. They don't stop. They keep on eating till they just they're gluttons. So they're greedy, aren't they?
Well, they're making sure that the day they don't have food, they can make it through those days.
But that's a form of greed.
Well, I think it's foresight.
Or maybe fear.
Yes, there's some.
Bonfire once said it's fear.
Because they fear scarcity.
Fear of scarcity. That
Right.
could very well be.
And she's as a stray cat is known scarcity, surely.
Well, Dennis sent us an article. I'm gonna take. I like to keep the idea on the. Well, this is, by the way, this is brought to you by the HREM, the Human Renewable Energy Measure. I'm gonna put that on the screen for you now, and at least I'm gonna try to put it on the screen for you now.
Something that can create fairness in our economic systems all over the world. That's what the HREM is about.
Human Renewable Energy Measure.
Right. It'll measure what we need for survival, and it will provide it through the economic system.
And you'll see on your screen now, it says Renew the Earth is a sponsor that we sponsor, and we work together with them. RenewTheEarth.org. Bridges Programming is a for-profit company that does our programming with us. BridgesProgramming.com. You'll see that across your screen now. And of course, with the impetus behind this whole thing is the HREM, the Human Renewable Energy Measure. And you'll see that on your screen now. And just keep on watching it. It's gone by pretty quickly, but it goes by constantly, so you'll be able to get, if you want to write it down and maybe do something with the concepts of what we're trying to talk about. And what we talk about on all of our programs is all humanity has to have their basic needs met for a minimal amount of life work. That's education, food, and shelter for about an hour of work. You may have to redefine the word work. But once that happens, you'll stop the wars. And it's a combination of socialism, communism, and capitalism, or communism, socialism, and capitalism. And it should be reversed. It should be capitalism, socialism, and communism, because the only communistic part of this concept is all education has to be shared equally as much as you can possibly use. That's the communism. Socialism is an agreement that all humanity has to have their basic needs met for a minimal amount of their life work a day.
And they can be defined as food, shelter,
and education. And then we can do
broad terms.
And we can measure those things in energy units. And then, of course, we always think that this has to happen, otherwise we're just going to be chasing our tails like we did for the past 4,000 or 5,000 years.
From our title of the program today, and this is Buckminster Fuller's words, it is to be everything for everybody, or oblivion, unquote.
Right.
And
everything
that was his
attitude
toward the end of his life, because he realized that we all have to be benefiting from our economics and our technology, and that our economic system needs to serve everyone, not just pit people against each other competitively and in order to see if we get the most profit. I did want to define what Renew the Earth is about, because we mentioned RenewTheEarth.org, and it is a 501c3. It's it started out as a way to educate people about renewable energy and promote projects in the United States that were successful in that respect. And that was called Renew America. But then they broadened it probably about 10 years ago to Renew the Earth, and doing the same thing worldwide, promoting successful projects around the world in renewable energy. Now, that kind of thing, because there are very few, it's common knowledge that renewable energy is a very beneficial way and direction to go as far as our energy source. And it's just a matter now of figuring out how to do it efficiently everywhere, start to replace our fossil fuel demand more and more everywhere, every nation, every part of the world. And when we bring new energy systems into an area that doesn't have their fossil support structure yet, that we bring renewable energies, sun, wind, the possibility of making fuels from biomass or organic materials. And then, you're not putting the fossil fuel industry out of business, what you're doing is turning that into something that is not the main energy source, but what Jeff would call a condiment, something that we do need desperately for industry, for the high heats and things like that, but to use it for what it's really good for, and for the manufacturing tasks that are demand that kind of fuel source, and not for everyday stuff like running our electronics in our homes or running our cars, for that matter, because we can now make plug-in cars. Almost every type of brand vehicle has an electric car now, and many of them are plug-ins. And if that electric is being supplied from solar and wind sources and biomass sources, we're doing a lot less damage to our earth resources.
And also, it's
and we're
also
using them
economical.
more and more efficiently and economically. And as Buckminster Fuller would say, we're getting more from less, more and more from less. And that's got to be the trend in our energy systems, because this is essential for the future of our species on this earth. Now, other species will survive once we're not creating climate change with the burning of fossil fuels. Other species will recover and evolve and survive, and other life forms, other plant forms. But we're just talking about, whether humans and our various activities on this earth are sustainable within the context of our resources.
When we say
our
sustainable,
behaviors.
the sustainable word is really out of hand.
Yeah.
When people say sustainable, it means we have a good quality of life for all humanity without destroying our life support systems, such as our air, water, and soil. And we have to stop killing one another.
Right.
Because when you shoot somebody, they're no longer sustainable. They're dead. And life has a cycle. We live about 80 years of age. We all need a certain amount of food and shelter. We all have to have the knowledge of what food and shelter to have, and we have to have the understanding about sustainability. So that's a sort of important thing, that just the word sustainability doesn't mean anything without understanding.
You have to have a context.
The contents of what we're trying to say. So if you believe that all humanity should have their basic needs met, they shouldn't be starved to death, they shouldn't have to work in slavery, then you're part of the HREM thinking process.
That's true.
And what you could do with this is you don't have to join. Here's what you got. Here's what you could do. Here's something you could do to make this happen. You do not join any organization. You do not send money. You do not ignore. What you can do is if you understand the HREM, read about it if you choose to, unless you got it right away, and then go to your friends using your social media. Any way you can use your own mind to do, because we don't really have all the answers.
And not all of this is going to happen through the computer.
And you need to talk to it. You need to talk to your friends in church groups. If you like Sunday today, if you're going to go to church, ask your pastor to do, a preacher, or whoever what kind of a denomination you have, or your imam, to do a Herman, not a sermon. Talk about the human renewable energy measure. To make sure the human renewable energy measure is out there. That's what you could do. Once it's in the vocabulary, then we can then start the measurements. And once the measurements are in place, just like foot or inch or mile or distance or gravity and impact, we can measure these things. And then we say that all humanity will agree that has to have their basic needs met. But what you can do to make this happen is make sure you talk about it, get it into the vocabulary, the hrem.org.
Yeah, humans have a natural propensity and a desire to measure things in order to understand their physical environment. And this has gone on ever since the beginning of our ability to think and speak. And, there's no point in our development where we weren't trying to understand our physical environment. Every animal does this, and humans do it in a very, maybe more sophisticated ways than some other animals we share this planet with, but we understand so very little about the other creatures we share the earth on with, that I can't make that assertion that they don't have just as complex a ways of dealing with environment and understanding environment as we do. They just don't speak the way that we do, so we don't understand them the way we understand each other. But we definitely need to measure things in order to begin to put them in the context of what we understand about our physical world. And it starts with measuring distance, which was very, very useful for, not very hard to figure out how useful that would be. Once people understood how far things were, and
human beings
yeah,
require measurements.
right. I don't want to go into detail about that because it's pretty obvious. So we're just talking about measuring our basic needs and making sure that our economics, first and foremost, economically satisfies human basic needs. And this will change the whole
way we do business.
Balance.
As the Pope said, we need to change the way we do business.
Right. It will change business.
It
will change social interactions. It will stop the tendency to turn groups against each other, groups of humans against each other on religious or political or race or gender or whatever bases, which is the way that economics for profit controls and manipulates right now. Economics for profit, it creates scarcity, it creates division, it creates our wars and poverty. And we need to change that dynamic by introducing an economics
measure
of abundance.
We
know that
we need
our economics can satisfy
all humanity,
all human needs, not wants, but needs. Needs are our need for food, our need for shelter,
and that's always
our
the same.
For education, need to understand our physical world and benefit from everything that humans have already figured out. Not to make that a scarcity, because that's another way of controlling populations, is to control knowledge and not allow everyone to participate and the diversity to flourish, which is where our survival is possible, is that we all are participating, that all our diversity is making an impact on the future. Right now, that is contracting. The diversity is trying. There are attempts to constrain diversity, to limit it by saying that these people are, somehow should not participate for various reasons, and we hear them all the time. The reasons why groups are chosen to not participate, and this is a bad tendency. This is a symptom of an economics that is creating scarcity artificially, creating scarcity and doing things in a profit-minded and not economical manner. So,
economics aren't for profit. They're to make sure things work
economically.
In other words, like efficiency is economics, but now economics is not efficiency, and the definition of economics is efficiency. Right now, we're in the, it's coming into the year 16, and, or it is 16 already. Is it 16? Yeah. And we're
Yes.
going to be having an election in 16, and we have, of course, the Republicans running, and their front runner is a multi-millionaire who really wants to, he wants to put fences up, and he wants to kill people. And unfortunately, I don't think that's a really good idea. So I can't think that's a good idea. And then we have, on the Democratic side, we have a person who's been Secretary of State and a senator of New York State, Hillary Clinton. And then we have someone else who's a social Democrat called Bernie Sanders. And Dennis, I think you sent us an email or an article.
Right. Do you have that article up on your computer, Dennis? Do you want to read?
Do you want to read your article? Or do you want us to do it?
Socialism already has arrived in U.S. It's an article by J. Jack Nowitz.
Jack Nowitz?
Jock Nowitz.
Jock Nowitz.
JOCHNOWITZ.
And that was in the Times Union.
Times Union, February 16th, 2016. So, Dennis, do you have that article up, or do you want us to?
It'd be better if you. I don't have it on the screen right now.
Okay, I'm just going to read the
Also on the
summary
screen,
and ask people to read
I
it in
can't
its
speak.
entirety if they want to. But there's a little summary here. Bernie Sanders, quote, democratic socialism may seem radical, but in many small ways, socialism is already widely in practice in the U.S., writes Gar Alperovitz at The Nation. He cites a host of examples from New York City to Texas to Alaska in such areas as banking, energy, home care, utilities, internet, and land trusts. And increasingly, the term socialism is being viewed more and more favorably with growing disillusionment in the current economic model. He writes, quote, whatever we call it, it is time to start discussing this system more openly and to refine its practical elements. And that's not J. Joknowitz speaking there. That's Gar Alperovitz speaking there, but that's sort of a summary, a summary of the article. Let me see if I can pull it up while you guys talk about that.
So now, now the reason why I think you sent this article is because the HRM, our programming, Sunday on the Front Stoop, Wednesday World Call In, always talks about issues that help humanity, and this article is talking about a socialistic way of helping humanity, but the HRM is not a socialistic point of view. It's part of it. It's a social agreement. And that's why I think you sent the article, Dennis, because we need that social agreement to be verbalized, to say that all humanity has to have their basic needs met, not their wants. And then capitalism will keep on going, but it'll be going in a fair manner. So everybody has their basic needs met, but people who we would call greedy would not be, they wouldn't be able to be greedy anymore because basic needs are met and no one's being hurt. And therefore they could do as much as they want to do, work as hard as they want, because they may just be ambitious people or sort of smart and figure out different ways of moving our humanity forward. And I don't like the emotional word greed, because I don't think it has a measure, a way of doing that, because if I'm somebody $1 poorer than me would consider me greedy. Someone $10 poorer than me, would that mean I'm more greedier than that? And it goes on, but I have no way of measuring what greed is, so I don't like the word. But I do know that if we stop killing one another while we're ambitious, that sort of cuts out the ambition, the greed. So I don't know if I've explained that well, but that's what I'm trying to do.
Okay. I just want to clarify that
Go ahead.
the article that you sent, Dennis, is actually Gar Alperovitz, Alperovitz, and the other name that I mentioned, that's an editor at Times Union, and he was commenting on this article. So if you want to find the article, it was published actually in The Nation.
The Nation magazine.
And February 11th, 2016.
We're going to look that up.
And I have it here now.
Oh, you have it? Okay, go ahead then.
Well, I can read you the opening paragraph.
How long is the article? Maybe a book?
The article is
quite a bit. It's a long way.
Long
article.
But we can actually discuss this on Wednesday.
Yeah, maybe Wednesday we'll discuss that whole article.
I'll save it
for Wednesday, next Wednesday.
but,
so tune in Wednesday.
Let's give you an idea.
We'll talk about The Nation. As a matter of fact, I'll try to call if I can get some time before, if I can.
But it's saying here in the second paragraph, more than 40% of Americans under the age of 30 view socialism favorably, according to the most recent YouGovernment poll, whatever that is, I don't know, YouGov poll. Positive responses.
United States government poll.
YOUGOV poll. That's what they. It's
YouTube poll. I don't know.
YouGov poll. Positive responses among Black Americans have ranged between 29 and 41% in recent surveys. A 2011 Pew Research Center poll that omitted the undecided option found that 49% of its young participants viewed socialism favorably. The most obvious source of this sea change is the failure of traditional approaches to address the nation's most pressing problems. Growing inequality, poverty, economic
insecurity. It's a world problem. It's not just U.S. problem.
Right.
It's a world problem, and that's what the Pope is saying. I just want to interject that. It's not just U.S. It's a worldwide problem. It's a worldwide economy that's screwing people all over the world.
And I think that, too, that the generation that was the definition of socialism during the generation that fought the Second World War was a very, very different definition than what the younger people are understanding it to be now, which is what they're understanding now is closer to the definition of socialism. At the time of the World War, socialism meant oppression by dictators and fascists and crazy people forcing their will upon groups that in genocidal manners, and this is what it came to mean in the minds, and that's why we went to war, to get rid of Hitler, to get rid of Mussolini,
because they were crucifying people, they were killing people,
and that was all defined as a form of socialism, but it was socialism hijacked by insanity, just like religions can be hijacked and by these kind of
to
things.
this day, like we're talking about,
you see it all the time.
Somebody brought up this thing where they put 50 people in front of a firing squad and shot 49 of them, and it wasn't true. It's just it's an ism that makes
one of our political presidential candidates.
I mean, so there's no way of backing it up, and there's no way of proving it. But it's very emotional. So people go for it because, like the word greed, or like the word, like the word love, or the word hate. Those are emotional words, and they have no.
They have power.
They have power because of emotion, but not as a measurement. The word democracy, the word freedom, those are words. How do you define that? The freedom to speak. Well, the reality for freedom to speak is we can speak and no one's going to shoot us in this country. However, the mainstream media doesn't talk about this. Very rarely do you hear anything that has substance on mainstream media. It's sound bites. It's commercials. It's more commercials. It's to make more money. It has nothing to do with anything that's physical or that's going to change the system. So this freedom of speech or freedom or democracy, and if you think democracy, when you see multimillionaires running for office, where the hell is the democracy there? You can't even get on the media to give your ideas out.
Well, this is the contraction of participation that I was trying to describe before, the lack of diversity, the contraction of participation when it should be opening up if we hope to go into the future with our generations of our species. I want to go back to this article just to give you an idea by Gar Alperovitz, or Witz, Alperovitz. I don't know if it's supposed to be pronounced with a V or a W. It is spelled with a V. With a W, Alperovitz. Okay. So I want to get that right. And he's definitely a voice that's been around for quite a while, along with Howard Zinn, who died several years ago. But Gar Alperovitz has not died, obviously. But I want to read the opening paragraph that he writes here in his article, "Socialism in America is Closer Than You Think." And he says, quote, "In 1970, the great liberal economist John Kenneth Galbraith declared that, quote, the Democratic Party must henceforth use the word socialism. It describes what is needed," unquote. Like many others, however, Galbraith largely dropped the subject in subsequent years. The response to Bernie Sanders' insurgent presidential campaign, along with polls showing that large numbers of young people and minorities in America have a positive view of socialism, suggests that this once forbidden concept may no longer be taboo. So Dennis, what do you think of that? Do you think that is true from what you've observed about Bernie Sanders' campaign and how younger people, I guess they're calling them millennium generation, how they're reacting to his message?
Well, that's interesting, Susan. I cannot say how they're reacting, but I am very impressed by the way Bernie Sanders is going at this, because for years we've been hearing about socialism, and we start thinking that, well, you're talking communism. We make it very bad. The people who were going in that direction were not bad, but we've created a distaste for socialism. This is a response here. If you go online, Mickey, 5 days ago, sent in this response. It says, "Thanks for this excellent article by Gar Alperovitz." He counters the created distaste for socialism by bringing in common examples and concepts that we can all relate to in our lives and in our cultural history. I really like this part of his article. So this is just one part of the article that it's a response by Mickey, like I said 5 days ago.
Okay.
He says, "I really like this part of the article. The general argument for public ownership has always been much broader than simply capturing profits for social use. For one thing, unlike private corporations, publicly owned enterprises are not required to grow to meet Wall Street's demands for ever-increasing profits, a critical consideration in any serious effort to move beyond our current growth at all cost systems toward a new sustainable model. Public forms of enterprise can also be made far more transparent than private firms, and they're more open to regulation, especially concerning climate change. And critically, they can be excluded from funding political campaigns. So anyway, that's just a part that this response from Mickey really focuses on.
Interesting. This is such This is such a lot of different threads that can go into a conversation like this. And while you were making your point, I was also reading ahead in this article, and he asked the question, what would socialism look like in 21st century America? And then he offers Bernie Sanders' view, and I'll quote from that. Just try to simplify things a little bit, because this can get very complicated very fast. Quote, despite his self-definition as a democratic socialist, Saunders has offered what is essentially a strong liberal or social democratic program of progressive taxation, financial regulation, single-payer health care, increased social security and income support programs, and environmental regulation. Although he backs worker-owned companies, Sanders explicitly disavowed government ownership of business in his major theme-setting speech at Georgetown University last November. And the author is making that point because one of the major assertions in his opinion of a traditional socialist argument is democratic ownership of the nation's wealth or means of production, as it's put, and that will create fairness amongst individuals worldwide. And so, you know, we're going into definitions of of socialism and selecting, like Bernie has selected certain things that he likes about it and left certain things out because he knows that he can't. So are we really talking about socialism once again? It's a kinder, friendlier definition than was used during World War II, where it was demonized as a social structure. But then there are nations that adopted it and did very well with it, Scandinavian nations, etc. But they adopted their own versions also. So when you're talking about what definition do you go back to as the standard?
That's where the Herm comes in.
And so, yeah, that's where you can actually simplify to the point what system or combination of, you don't have to call them systems, what combination of assertions or agreements will provide food, shelter, and education worldwide to every individual.
And that's
their whole
and that
life.
has to be measured, because
And
without a measurement, you can't provide that. How much should someone pay in taxes?
see, what we're looking at, even with the definition of socialism, and as the article is evolving here, as they're struggling, they're struggling with the side effects of a constricting and profit-oriented economic system that is going to overpower any of these intentions. You know, even the select ones that Bernie Sanders has asserted.
The bottom line is, who is going to pay for it? That's what they keep on saying. Who is going to pay for that? I mean, that's
Let me go back to the article. You can't have financial regulation if the economics owns the people that create the laws.
Right.
If the corporations own and the banks own the lawyers who are going to write up and pass the laws, they own those, not completely. I'm not saying that the game is over, but it is definitely leaning very heavily in favor of who can
control the
media, control the way laws are written. He's saying single payer healthcare. Well, first you've got to convince the insurance companies that they don't want to get all the possible profit out of every drug that ever comes on the market, and none of it goes back to. So you're always dealing with a constricting and undiversified economic system that is only saying there's scarcity and there's a need for constant profit making. These are unsustainable directions, and we understand that. So you have to go back further. Bernie Sanders has to go back further. Gar Parowitz has to go back further. You can't start with the definition of a system like socialism and say, okay, here is the historic definition as defined by Marx or whoever you want to go back to. It has to go back even further. It has to go into our instincts at the very beginning of how we're going to organize economics to the benefit of everyone. And it did start out that way. Tribally, it did start out that way, where, you know, if your tribe is going to survive, you have to provide for everyone. Well, if our species on this planet is going to survive, we have to provide for everyone first of all. And that is the least expensive, the most economical thing you can do, and
to keep the
and
species
it will change
alive,
everything, right?
And to stop the wars.
If that's your premise and your goal.
Well, I want to say there are two things. First of all, the Pope is saying the same thing in very similar to that of Sanders. Now, if you go to Zeitgeist moving forward, they will talk about the economic system, and they tell you it can't be tweaked the way it is now. It has to be totally changed, and the only way to change it is with some kind of a measure to know what you want to change it to. Here's where we are now, and you know you must have that measure that we all need education, food, and shelter for a basic amount of life spent time, about an hour a day, according to people who measure this kind of stuff, and then you let your free market take effect. That's the way, and that's exactly how we should be doing it. And the HREM, the Human Renewable Energy Measure, gives us a point of start, and that's very, very important. We're going to take a little break, and I haven't played this song in a while. We have permission from the Foothills Trio to play this. Do you remember this song, Dennis, that we're going to play? But I'm going to play it.
I'm going to have to hear it first.
Okay, we're going to play this song. We'll be back in about maybe 4 or 5 minutes, and we'll continue with this conversation. Then we're going to get a little bit into Bucky's statement at the beginning of the show, but we'll continue on with this trend of thought. We'll be back in a few minutes, so stand by, and please remember, you could do something. You have a job to do to make this happen. So make sure it does. We'll be right back.
Yay!
We the people hand in hand, we the people understand that there's an answer, there's a way. We the people have to say, so send the orders to prepare, that we the people do declare. Send the good news, send the word, we the people will be heard, we the people everywhere. There's a message in the air, and it's moving across the land, and if you listen, you can hear it well, my friend. We know the time has come to take our heads out of the sand, 'cause if we don't, the chance might never come again. The future is a reason, not building ways of war, and the time has come for a reason to be heard. The purpose of the people's what this declaration's for. It's why our fathers told us word for word, let it be heard. We the people hand in hand, we the people understand that there's an answer, there's a way. we the people have to say. So send the orders to prepare, that we the people do declare. Send the good news, send the word, we the people will be heard. We the people everywhere. Now we won't accept excuses, and we won't accept the lies of those who lead our nations into hell. It's time to call the block and say to them, enough's enough. It's time we all should hear the tolling of the bell. And it's time to feed the hungry, and it's time to heal the pain, and it's time to beat our weapons into clouds. It's time to hear the voices that have risen once again. It's the voices of the people, clear and loud, singing proud. We the people, hand in hand. We the people understand that there's an answer, there's a way. We the people have to say. So send the orders to prepare, that we the people do declare. Send the good news, send the word, we the people will be heard. We the people everywhere. We the people, hand in hand. We the people understand that there's an answer, there's a way. We the people have to say. So send the orders to prepare, that we the people do declare. Send the good news, send the word, we the people will be heard. We the people, we the people, we the people everywhere.
Well, that's great. Thank you, King Foothills Trio. You just that's where we're coming from. We all think that all humanity. It doesn't say we the corporations should be the run. It's for the people. It's for the physical people. That's where we're coming from. All humanity physically has to have their basic needs met.
And I'd like to go back to Gar Parowitz's article here. And of course, like anybody who has a point to make, we look around for some indication in anything that there's support for that point coming from other people. And of course, that's what I've done by reading forward in this article. Gar Parowitz makes his assertion is that there should be more ownership of the means of production, and he goes on to show in the article that he's written here many examples of small places where this is happening in smaller and larger ways. But I'm picking out one that's been around for a long time, and that's in Alaska, where the extraction of, quote, the state's oil and minerals, dividends are paid out annually to state residents as a matter of legal right, and that word is very important, in my opinion. The only practical, quote, model in the United States of publicly supported income with no additional work requirement. In 2008, each resident, we're talking about every child,
right.
Every adult, every
registered to live in Texas,
every
Alaska.
resident, United States citizen received
In Alaska.
$2,069 a year, and that's over $10,000 for a family of 5 from these, quote, socialized funds.
Now, wait a second.
And
You got to understand where the socialized coming
in
from.
that same year, may I finish? In that same year, the governor, who was Sarah Palin at the time, signed into law a bill that gave every resident an extra $1,200 from the state's natural resource revenues. Now, the point that I'm making, if I could make it, is that the HREM speaks to this, the Human Renewable Energy Measure, but I would say this needs to be expanded because all of our technology, all of our efforts to this point have been communal efforts on the part of every human being in the world contributing to the technologies,
extracting the oil out of the
we
state
are
of
in
Texas.
common, if you want to call it, ownership of Earth resources, and we are not, there's not anyone more has more rights than any other person living at this, living at any one time, that they would have the right to more of these natural resources and these technologies and the profit from these technologies than any other person.
By the way,
when you're talking about,
I want to bring this out. It's not a tax. What it is that the revenues taken out makes that from the state of Alaska, they share the natural resources taken out. So it's before people get paid.
The profit.
It's before the profit.
Right.
Everyone, from the cost of the natural resource, they get paid a certain dollar amount.
And that's not by any means the only part of the world where this is possible. And there's some places that have more favorable resources than others. So then that can be distributed to places where there isn't as much. There's scarce, real natural scarcity, so that those people can get their food, shelter, and education. I don't know if I'm making this clear, but this is, in my opinion, a practical model for expansion.
Well, the thing is, but you don't know the problem with this practical model is it's based on money, not on the basic needs met. And it may work out to be basic needs met, but we don't know that because but I know living standards in Alaska are very expensive.
Right.
I mean, a hamburger in certain areas costs you $20, $30.
They don't ship. They have to ship a lot of stuff in.
But the point I'm making is you can't go by money, and that's the problem with most people. They revert back to a currency. It has to be based on energy units. It's like, for instance, if every man, woman, and child in Alaska got their basic needs met, their 1 million calories of food, 1 million calories of water, all their education, and their shelter for basic needs, just a minimum in energy units, let's say 1 million energy units a year for shelter, then you can go ahead and say, okay, that's their basic units, their basic needs are met. Mm. Then you can correlate that to a currency, whatever that may be in different parts of the world. You got to be able to measure it in energy units, not money, and that's the problem with that system in Alaska. I just want to bring that out. It is a socialistic part of living, but it can't be measured in money, and that's the problem.
This is the next step, not to measure that particular fulfillment of the economic system on the part of the economic system in terms of money. It has to be measured in terms of it being accomplished in physical reality for every individual. I'm going to go away from this article now because there's a lot more that could be discussed, but certainly look it up.
We'll try to get a hold of him by email to join us on the HREM show, to talk about the HREM on one of our shows.
Anyway, I want to go. We only have about 10 minutes left. I want to go to our summary that came from.
Go ahead, Dennis. What was that?
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Before you get to the summary, I mentioned there are responses to this really interesting.
We're going to have to do that next week because we're going to do that next Wednesday. So stand by next Wednesday on World Call In for the responses. We'll talk some more
about Gara Parowitz's article
but right
and
now
the responses
we want to get to the summary with Bucky on this because we only have I think we have 6 minutes left, so let's just do that.
Well, I just, and we'll probably have to revisit this too. We definitely got carried away with that interesting article, but his quoting from Critical Path, he says, Buckminster Fuller says, ecological interactions. And what he means by that is the long time, millions of years, all the interactions, first of all, set off by sunlight and water on this planet, and all of the development of life forms over long time, quote, made possible the gradual conduct of human society by mind instead of cunning and muscle. This also led to human minds consciously acting as local in-universe problem solvers, all in support of the integrity of eternally regenerative universe. Quote, time would come evolutionarily when humans acquired enough knowledge of generalized principles, thereafter making all the right moves for all the right reasons. So Buckminster Fuller, unquote, he was extremely hopeful and felt that we'd come to that critical point where we have sufficient technology to meet all human needs, and that it was just a matter of using our minds at this point, and these generalized principles that we agreed upon, that are essential, and solving the problems that are before us in the right ways and for the right reasons. And we all know instinctively and consciously what the right reasons and what these moves could be to accomplish them. We know we don't want war. We don't want people living in poverty. We don't want people, refugees from their countries, leaving their countries because of war and economic starvation, terrorism. You can call it economic terrorism. We don't want these things. We want to make the right moves in the future for the right reasons.
We actually need these things.
As Buckminster Fuller said.
We actually need these things. It's something that we need. We know we can't.
We need to make the right moves.
Right.
We need to use our minds to the benefit of the future.
Well, anyway, Dennis, so we'll tune in next week.
Thank you for sending that article.
That was a good article, and we're going to try to get a hold of the writer of that article in The Nation, if we can. As a matter of fact, Dennis or anybody, please email that writer from The Nation magazine and ask him to please look at the HREM, and if they'd like to do a program with us on World Call-In or Sunday on the Front Stoop, they're more than welcome to join us. So that's the plan of attack on doing that. Do you have anything you want to add, Dennis?
Wow, well, it's very interesting. I really wish we could talk for another hour. We'll have to do that on Wednesday, okay?
Yeah, Wednesday. And by the way, if people want to know what they could do to make this happen, here's the actions you must take. You must, if you want this to happen, if you want to see a world that doesn't have war and has economic, not equality, but economic balance where no one dies, all you need to do is use your internet and talk to your pastors, or when you go out for a ball game, talk about the human renewable energy measure, where we are and how we're going to get to, so all humanity where we want to go to. But you can't get there without knowing where. I mean, we don't really know what the where we are, so we can't get to where we want to go. And that's what the measurement's all about. It's trying to get to where we are.
To understand where we are. How many of the human needs are met? How
by
are they
energy
met?
Units.
Right. And now how do we meet all of them?
So what you could do, your action to take is if you understand what we're saying, Get onto your internet, use your own mind, your own brain to figure out how to get this to go viral if possible. And then once that happens, then the Pope and Bernie Sanders and other people around the world will understand that that's how we judge the gross domestic product.
That's what people want.
That's what we need, so all humanity doesn't get killed by bombs and starvation. That's what we need to do. I want to thank you very much for listening. Dennis, I want to thank you for that great article, and it was very helpful. And we're going to try to do some more work on that article next Wednesday. And I want to thank at least Bernie Sanders for trying to move stuff forward, and maybe the other candidates will pick up on it. Thanks again for listening. This has been Bridges Programming, Sunday on the Front Stoop, the longest stoop in the world. Susan and Jeff and Dennis, and we're leaving. See you then.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Susan.
Try to stretch your paycheck, it's never quite enough for energy. It all comes down to you, energy. You wonder where the money's gone, well, here's some fuel for thought. It all comes down to energy. Fossil fuel affects our lives with ripples on a lake. Cars and farms and factories and trucks. Supplies go down and prices soar, our futures are at stake. And when it's gone, it won't come back, and we'll be out of luck. Oh, energy. It all comes down to energy. You wonder where the money's gone, well, here's some fuel for thought. It all comes down to energy. We can get our energy from corn and grass and trees. Even trash converts to biofuels. Break loose from the stranglehold of oil companies. Renewables can fuel the world. We're here to spread the news of energy. It all comes down to energy. You wonder where the money's gone, well, here's some fuel for thought. It all comes down to energy.